Oh, did you just break it?
It'll be fine for the video, but this is going in the
Okay.
trash after we're done recording.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the channel. It is Jared here at Kevin's. It's Kevin here at his. This is JK Amusements.
Welcome back to another video here on the channel, everybody. Today we wanted to talk about our top 10 picks for the best horror games you could play this October.
Spooky season is here. I am so excited. Spooky season's favorite time of year. Love October. Halloween's the best holiday. You can fight me on it. I'll lose in a physical battle. Love horror games. Love horror movies. Everything. So this is us with our top 10 picks for games to play this month that will forcibly vacate the urine from your body. We're also not limiting it to single games, though we will be mentioning a few of our picks will be franchises that have stayed the course and they've made a name for themselves throughout the years. The games are not in any particular order. This isn't us ranking games per se. Like number one's not going to be like, this is the game you have to play. Stay tuned.
So the first game up on our list is The Evil Within. Now you really can go with either game in the Evil Within series. Personally, I think the first one does a much better job at setting up the world of The Evil Within, and the second one does a much better job at scaring you, in my opinion.
Interesting. See, I've only ever played the first one, but oh man, Sebastian's plight in the first game was insane.
You wouldn't think that they would be able to. The thing that scared me the most in the second game that I didn't think they'd be able to top is the character designs.
Really?
Like, they got even more creative with how scary they were.
That's really well done.
And like, it's kind of like your psychological sci-fi type of horror game. But I really think
Sci-fi ecological.
it's a type of horror that everybody can get behind, and that's why I think it's a good starter horror game. It will scare you, don't get me wrong. It will scare you a lot, and you'll want to put the controller down and never turn on the TV again.
Yeah, because this, like my god-awful pun implies, this game, it messes with your head. Like the game, almost like the game messes with itself. So you never know what's real or not in the game. Really cool.
So yeah, that's our first pick for top 10 horror games you could play this October.
Now the next game up on our list is Subnautica. I've personally played through all of the first one. I haven't picked up Below Zero yet. I've seen development update videos. It looks really good, but the first game, it's scary, but it doesn't sell itself as being scary. Like, it's just it's Minecraft underwater. Your objective is to get off of the alien planet that you're on. As someone who suffers from severe thalassophobia, it makes me not feel good.
I think it's like more than anything, it's the like vastness of the open ocean that is scary.
That's thalassophobia. It's like the fear of deep waters.
Mm-hmm.
It might not specifically be that, but it falls under that category if it isn't just that. But I remember there were so many times where I'd be playing it and my housemates are all in the living room. They're like watching TV on one screen, but also like looking over to see me do stuff in Subnautica on the other screen. And I get to a point where there's just like a 45-degree decline in the water, and it starts getting murky. And in my little sea moth, I would like go like 20 meters and then like serpentine backwards because I'm like no, and they all started like fucking yelling at me. They're like, just do it. I'm like, ah. As someone who has thalassophobia, this game is one of the scariest games I've ever played. Uncharted waters, upwards of 1,500 meters down.
Yeah, you get miles
really deep. Like,
I think
you find like caves and stuff. I really recommend looking into it. It is, I was gonna say a fun time, but I can't really say that because it was an awful time. You feel?
Our next pick, a game that's near and dear to my heart, it's The Last of Us. Now, if you only look at the box art for The Last of Us and you only look at the images, you might assume that it's your typical run-of-the-mill zombie shooter and just write it off as one of those, but it's really not. And it's not really a horror game either per se, but the reason we put it on this list is because it does a great job of scaring you still while delivering a great narrative at the same time. And that's what this really is. It's kind of a story person's horror game. You're there for the story primarily, with some scares along the way. You play as this guy Joel, and you have this 14-year-old girl Ellie that you are traveling across the post-apocalyptic US with. You're going on a mission, and your job is to get her across the US safely without getting infected and without her dying, because you have to take her from one end to the other. And it's really about the journey. And if you've ever read Cormac McCarthy's The Road, then this is basically that, but the game.
Guys, it's almost 2022. If you haven't played The Last of Us, it's on you. You're slacking.
But if you love stories and you love just like a great story and you love learning about relationships between characters, this is very much the horror game that I would recommend for you.
Number 4, Outlast. Fantastic first-person horror franchise. What makes the Outlast franchise so unique is that you don't get to fight back. It's run and hide the entire game, and you constantly being pursued by enemies. It is so nerve-wracking where every single thing you do, you're like you're constantly like looking over your shoulder. It's such an anxiety-inducing experience. It's definitely scary, and a lot of body horror, because the main characters of the Outlast franchise rival Ethan Winters for hand mutilation, and you're constantly recording. It's your news reporters, and you're just documenting all of this. It almost like connects you to the player character, where you like it adds a level of they're also seeing this for the first time and reacting to it, which I really enjoy. It really puts you into the game.
And the only thing in your character's arsenal is a camcorder.
The only things you can pick up are bandages and batteries.
If you like feeling terrified and you like feeling followed all of the time, that is very much the horror game for you this October. The next game up on the list is Silent Hill, and specifically, we're recommending Silent Hill 2.
Yes, absolutely.
Personally, because I think the story is better than the first one. At first, when you're playing the game, it seems like it's primarily just a supernatural horror game. But as you get deeper and deeper into the story and unraveling the mysteries of this town, which is Silent Hill, you sort of get more of the, okay, this might be more of a psychological thing as well. It is honestly one of the most overlooked horror games these days. I mean, it got its heyday back in its day, but I feel like it's not talked about enough with how influential it was on the horror scene. It is showing its age these days because
it definitely shows its age, but the feeling of constant dread you get as playing as James Sunderland, walking around this desolate, foggy town where there's nothing. You don't see anything for like 30 to 40 minutes. This creeping dread like washes over you, and then stuff starts picking up. And like another thing about this game, the dog ending.
Yeah.
And that's all we're gonna say.
I forgot about that. If you want to know more, play the game. And
Spoiler
also,
free.
if you like puzzles and you like cool twists in games, then this is the horror game for you.
Cool twist, dog ending. Play the game. For number 6, we have a powerhouse franchise, and I don't think I'm overstating that.
Not at all.
We have Resident Evil. Kevin and I both talked about this today, and we both shared the same sentiment of we just can't pick a single game from this franchise. Especially with the mainline titles, there are so many unique experiences that bring unique frights and mechanics to the table that each game, even though the more recent ones, like the remakes and 7 and 8, they all feature the same mechanics, they all play differently. Each game has its own feel. There's an extended story between all of them, but you could play any of these as a standalone game. If you haven't played 7 but want to play Village and you get your hands on it, you get your sweaty Sony hands on it. It offers a cutscene at the beginning of the game that just quickly covers what happened in 7.
I think a good way of sort of like summing up the identity of the Resident Evil franchise is, even though the quality varies across all the games, each time the developers try something different.
Exactly.
Like you said, each game is unique and it has its own distinct personality. These games feel alive in a way.
They make an active effort not to make it stale.
Resident Evil is kind of like the wild card. Like, it's kind of like got something for every horror fan. Do your own research and find out what game is right for you. All right, the next game we're talking about
Number
is
7!
Alien Isolation. Now, most of the time, Alien games from back in the day were just, you're this big buff military dude.
It's a Doom clone.
And you're mowing down xenomorphs.
It's a Doom clone.
Until Alien Isolation came out, and then it stripped you away from being this badass military shooter to being a lone survivor on an abandoned space station with this deadly xenomorph crawling around, stalking you. This is interesting from a developer perspective because the AI that runs the xenomorph learns as you play longer. If you say use your flamethrower to try to burn it and it runs away, it knows that you're going to try to do that again, so it's going to change its strategy. So that is a really interesting challenge for gamers looking for another adaptive challenge that they want to put into their games or they want to experience themselves. Personally, I played it. This was the first time in a horror game that I felt outsmarted by the AI in a game. And that scares me. So if you like thinking person's horror games and you like games that make you think on your feet and sort of adapt in the moment, this is very much the game for you, because this game will challenge you in a way that no other horror game will.
Next up for number 8, we have another powerhouse franchise with Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, you may be asking me, Jared, why are you talking about Five Nights at Freddy's instead of Kevin, even though Kevin's played them and I haven't? I don't have an answer, but however, I have watched countless hours of people playing this game. It's very unique in the sense where even if you're just watching it, because of the structure of the game, you're getting more of the actual gameplay experience, whereas you're watching someone play like Horizon Zero Dawn. There are so few actual mechanics to the game, whereas like they add more mechanics as the games go on. But I have watched gameplay all the way through the 5th installment. The anxiety that these games bring is never ending. There are no breaks, and each night is worse than before. I'm still so mind-boggled at how simple these games are. Because of that, how terrifying they can become.
You get right down to it. It is a game that primarily or solely scares you through jump scares. On paper, you wouldn't think that would scare you consistently throughout how long this series has been going on.
However, when you flip it and it is a game where the whole concept of the game is you are actively preventing jump scares, that is the only thing on your mind throughout the game of when's it gonna happen. Honestly, I'd start with the first one just because it's the simplest. Ease your way through the series.
So yeah, if you like to be jump scared, Five Nights at Freddy's all the way.
Number 9.
The Medium. This is a recent horror game. I wanted to talk about The Medium because the uniqueness that it had in rendering 2 different scenes at the same time, and I'll show that here,
So
where you're existing in 2 different areas, but you're playing both the same character in 2 different places at the same time.
Like, camera split right down the middle. You're seeing technically the same thing on both screens, but it's completely different because, like you said, one is like 2 different places at the same time. One is in the real world, Marianne, and the other is like her spirit form in the spirit realm. So freaking cool.
And you're essentially playing 2 different games at the same time, and I played this on PC. The hardware requirements were pretty steep, and I thought I could get away with running it on minimum settings. I could not. My PC wouldn't even boot at first. This game is heavy.
It just came to PS5 last month.
Yeah,
too.
I'm pretty excited about it. I think I might replay it because like it's.
I have yet to play it. What you showed me just earlier, because you were like really excited to talk about it, and I was like, "What the fuck is The Medium?" And now I'm fully invested. Like, I'm gonna look into getting this for my PS5 to play this month.
Like, it looks.
I'm listening to the list that we're making.
It looks so good. Like it's a horror game that I actually want to buy. So if you like psychological horror, if you like supernatural horror, and you like just a game that presents you with unique gameplay choices, The Medium is definitely for you. Especially since the graphics look amazing. Especially if you got a PC or a console that can handle cranking it up to max settings. If you could play this at 4K, my opinion, that's going to be the best looking horror game out there these days.
Number 10. Can you guess what it is?
Doki Doki Literature Club.
Quick honorable mentions down here. Doki Doki Literature Club. Sorry, you've just barely missed the cutoff. It's Dead Space. Of course we were going to talk about Dead Space. Arguably, we saved the best for last. Considering our history with the series, absolutely love it. We've talked about it on the channel before, about how I bought Dead Space 1 and 2 on a whim one day. I was like, Dead Space 1 is $8 at GameStop. Sure. And then brought it back here. Back when we were in high school, absolutely was horrified by the cutscene, the trailer that would play if you stayed on the home screen for too long. And I ran upstairs. I was like, Kevin, I physically can't play this by myself. I need you downstairs.
If you had to pick between 1 or 2, what would you play? We're not even going to mention 3 for horror aspects.
We're not even.
We're going to play 3 just because we want to finish the series, but don't get me wrong, it is not the scariest game in the series at all. If you had to pick one game that's the scariest for you, that's the best for horror purposes, what would you pick?
I would argue 2.
Really? I would argue 1.
I'm torn because 1, you have that feeling of dread, like the OG Metroid, in space, no one can hear you scream type of thing. But in space, no one can hear you talk because Isaac doesn't talk in the first game, which may be a drawback for like story, yes, but it also adds to just the dead air, which like just slowly builds inside of you. All of the silence makes the moments where when the necromorphs burst out of a vent and then the soundtrack kicks in and it's suddenly 0 to 100 and you're like, oh god. I like the story in Dead Space 2 more.
Well, yeah, because you have more of a narrative that's already set up. I could see if you're going story-wise, but I'm saying, what scares you the most playing?
Being alone. Now talking about it, I'm going to have to rescind my stance. I'm going to say that Dead Space 1 is the scarier of the games. 2 is gorier because of the eyeballs.
Yes, the eyeball scene. So if you want to know more about that, you got to play through both games. For me, the first one is the premier scariest and maybe the scariest horror game of all time. Am I going to commit to that? Am I going to commit to that on camera? Are we going to commit to that?
Oh, no, this is you.
Okay.
I don't know him.
The reason that I think the first one is such a good horror game and does such a good job at scaring you is not only is Isaac in the dark on everything and he doesn't know whatever is going on, neither does the player, because by the second game you have to assume that most people have played the first game and they're at least familiar with how these things work.
Yeah.
Cut off the limbs, cut off the head, keep your ammo high, always carry health on you, and you'll be good. In the beginning, in the first game, they don't know that.
You're just flying,
they don't know.
You're flying blind.
Exactly, and that's why I was scared most of the time, because I didn't know what was going on. I would recommend Dead Space 1 starting there. If you want to play 2, that's fine, that's up to you, but if you really want the Dead Space experience and really want to be scared out of your pants, I would recommend playing through both of these games, because these are honestly our favorite games in the horror genre. I think that's all we have to say about that.
Yeah.
So that was 10 games of the horror genre that you could play this October to get spooked. That's pretty much it. And as always, we'll see you at JK Amusements in the next video.
Go pee your pants.